They called me junk, in the house I built with my own 2 hands. My daughter-in-law said I was obsolete. My son David just watched. They thought they had broken me. They thought the old mechanic was finished, ready for the scrapyard. They were about to find out that even old engines can roar back to life. My name is Robert Miller. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not just talking to the wind, because I need to tell you how my sanctuary became my prison, and what I did when they finally pushed too far. The cold always woke me up first. It seeped up from the concrete floor. It crawled through the thin mattress of the cot. It settled deep into my bones. I stared at the exposed pipes running across the basement ceiling. They dripped sometimes. This was my home now, the basement. I built this house. 40 years of sweat and grease from Miller's Mechanics. Every beam, every tile. I placed them for Martha, my wife. Now Martha was gone, and I was living underneath the life we built. 2 years. 2 years since Martha died. That's when the real cold set in. When she was here, this house was alive. It smelled like baking bread and lemon polish. Now upstairs, it smelled sterile, expensive, unwelcoming, like a museum where you aren't allowed to touch anything. David and his wife, Jessica, moved in to help after the funeral. I was grateful at first. I was drowning in grief. But their help felt a lot like a takeover. It started slowly, insidiously, like a creeping vine strangling a tree. It started in the kitchen. A few weeks after they moved in, I was making coffee, my old drip machine, the one Martha and I used every morning for 20 years. Jessica walked in. She wore sleek, expensive athletic wear. She stopped. She stared at my coffee maker like it was a cockroach. "Robert," she said. Her voice was tight. "We talked about this." "Talked about what?" I asked, measuring the grounds. She pointed at the counter. A sleek silver machine sat there. It looked complicated. "We use the espresso machine now. It's cleaner, more efficient." She paused, her nose wrinkled slightly. "These old things harbor bacteria." She unplugged my coffee maker. The little red light died. The silence in the kitchen suddenly felt loud. She wrapped the cord around it. She opened the trash cabinet. She hesitated. Then she put the coffee maker on the floor at my feet. "Take this downstairs," she ordered. "We need the counter space." I just stared at her. It was just a thing. I knew that, but it was our thing. My throat tightened. I didn't say anything. I picked it up. I took it downstairs. The vine tightened. Then it was the living room, my armchair, the big leather one, worn soft over the years. I used to read in it every night. Martha would curl up on the sofa next to me. I came upstairs one evening. It was gone. In its place was a modern chair, all sharp angles and thin gray cushions. It looked incredibly uncomfortable. "Where's my chair?" I asked David. He was watching TV, some financial news channel. He was always watching that channel lately. He didn't look at me. "Jessica had it moved to the basement, Dad." "Why?" "It was too bulky for the new design," he said, his voice flat, distant. "The new design?" I looked around. The room felt cold, empty. The colorful afghans Martha knitted were gone. The family photos on the mantel were replaced by abstract art. It was comfortable. I liked it. "This is better, Dad," he said, finally glancing at me. His eyes were empty, more contemporary. "We have to keep the house updated." I didn't argue. I was too tired, too broken. I let them chip away at my life, piece by piece. Then came the big move, the exile. David sat me down. Jessica stood behind him, her arms crossed, a united front. "Dad," David started. His voice was gentle but firm, the voice he used when he was about to do something I wouldn't like. "We've been thinking. The master bedroom, it's a lot for you to manage." "It's fine," I said. I didn't want to leave Martha's room. Our room. The memories were still there. Faint, but present. "It's not fine, Robert," Jessica interjected. Her voice was sharp. "You aren't sleeping well. We can hear you pacing, and the stairs are getting difficult for you." She was lying. The stairs were fine. My knees ached. Yes, but I wasn't an invalid. "We think it's best if you take the basement guest room," David continued. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's quieter down there. Private. You won't be disturbed when the grandkids come over early in the morning," Jessica added, her voice sickly sweet. "You need your rest." They made it sound like a favor, a kindness. I knew what it was. They wanted the master suite. They wanted me out of sight, out of the way. I was too tired to fight. I let them lead me downstairs. I let them box up my life and store it away. They treated me like an old piece of furniture. Obsolete, bulky, junk. I struggled out of the cot this morning. My knees popped, protesting the dampness. I put on my slippers and shuffled toward the narrow stairs. I just wanted a cup of coffee, even if it was one of those bitter little pods from that silver machine. As I reached the top of the stairs and pushed the door open, I heard it, a loud, agonizing screech. Wood against the hardwood floors upstairs. It wasn't the sound of construction. It was the sound of destruction. I walked through the kitchen, that fortress of stainless steel and white marble. I headed toward the living room. When I stepped through the archway, my heart stopped dead in my chest. Two large men in moving uniforms were wrestling Martha's baby grand piano toward the front door. That piano. It wasn't just furniture. It was Martha's soul. She saved for it for 10 years before we were even married. She played it every evening, her fingers dancing across the keys, filling the house with music that could soothe any worry. When she got sick, when she couldn't play anymore, I would just sit next to it, touching the smooth, dark wood, remembering the sound of her laughter mixing with the melody. It was the last true piece of her left in the main part of the house. Everything else was gone, and they were taking it away. The room tilted. The air felt thin. I couldn't breathe. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked. It sounded old, weak, even to me. I hated how weak I sounded. Jessica didn't even look up from the tablet she was holding. She stood in the center of the room, like a general commanding troops. "We're clearing this out, Robert," she said, her tone flat, dismissive. "I told you we were making changes today." My son David was standing by the large bay window, staring out at the lawn, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He used to be a thoughtful boy. Now he was just a ghost haunting the edges of the room, avoiding the conflict. "This was Martha's," I said. The words were thick in my throat. I walked toward the piano. My legs felt heavy. I reached out a trembling hand. I placed it on the polished surface. It was cool beneath my palm. Jessica sighed dramatically. A loud, exaggerated sound. She rolled her eyes. "I know exactly what it is, Robert," she said, her voice dripping with impatience. "It's a relic. A relic, my wife's heart. A relic. It's massive, it's out of tune, and nobody plays it." She tapped her tablet screen. "It's taking up prime real estate." "Prime real estate?" I stared at her. The words felt alien in my own home. "This is a home, Jessica, not a property listing." "It's both," she snapped. Her patience was gone. "David and I need this space for my new home office." She gestured around the room, expansive. "My wellness business is expanding exponentially. I need a professional environment for my virtual clients." Her wellness business, selling overpriced vitamins and vague advice online. It seemed to require the complete erasure of my past, my life. "This dusty old thing doesn't fit the brand," she added, waving a dismissive hand at the piano. "You can't just throw this away," I pleaded. The desperation was rising in my chest, a hot, painful pressure. This was the line. They couldn't cross this line. "We aren't throwing it away," Jessica said. Her voice dripped with condescension, like she was explaining something very simple to a very stupid child. "We donated it to a community center. They are picking it up. It's done." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Be grateful it's going to a good cause." She turned back to the movers. Her tone shifted instantly. "Watch the door frame. If you scratch that paint, it comes out of your paycheck." The cruelty was so casual, so effortless. I looked at David. My son, the boy I taught to change a tire, the boy who cried when his mother played Chopin. "David," I begged. My voice was raw, pleading. "Tell her, this is your mother's piano. You can't let her do this." David flinched. His shoulders tensed. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment. I saw a muscle jump in his jaw. I thought for a second he might finally stand up for me, for Martha. But he didn't turn around. He took a deep breath, and he said nothing. His silence was a betrayal deeper than Jessica's cruelty. He chose her. Again. The knife twisted in my gut. He was gone. My son was gone. Jessica walked right up to me, invading my space. I could smell her overpowering perfume. It was suffocating. "Listen to me, Robert, and listen good," she hissed. Her voice was low, venomous. "David and I uprooted our lives. We moved in here to help you after Martha died. Help me? By taking everything from me? You were a mess, she spat. The word felt ugly. We took over the bills, we took over managing the shop because you were falling apart. You haven't had to worry about a single thing for 2 years. She leaned closer. I could see the anger boiling behind her eyes, the contempt. You should be grateful we let you stay here at all, she whispered. But let's be clear. This is our house now, our life, our future. She jabbed a manicured finger into my chest. Hard. You don't get a vote on the decor, or anything else. Now go back downstairs or go for a walk. You're in the way. I stood there, paralyzed. The sheer audacity of her words. Their house. I owned this house outright. The mortgage was paid off 20 years ago. The shop? David was managing the day-to-day operations because I was grieving. But it was still mine. The deed. The licenses. Everything was in my name. When did I become a tenant in my own life? The front door opened wider. The movers grunted. The piano disappeared into the bright morning sunlight. The silence that followed was deafening. The room suddenly felt vast, empty, a void where music used to live. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't look at the empty space, at the indentations the piano legs had left on the floor, the scars on the wood. I turned and walked back toward the basement. Retreating to my cold, dark hole, I sat on the cot. I picked up the framed photo of Martha. Her smile was warm, her eyes full of the life I missed so desperately. They took your piano, Martha, I whispered. My throat was tight with unshed tears. They're erasing us, but the piano, that was the moment. The grief shifted. It crystallized into something else. Something cold and hard. Resolve. I wasn't junk. This was still my house. And it was time I reminded them of that. The next morning I skipped my usual quiet walk. I put on my old work clothes, the ones stained with grease and history. I drove my old Ford pickup truck down to Miller's Mechanics. The truck roared to life. A familiar, comforting sound, a sound of power. The shop was busy when I arrived. The sound of air wrenches and clanging metal, music to my ears. I saw my 2 best mechanics, Tom and Kevin. They had been with me for over 20 years. Good men, loyal. They looked up, surprised, when I walked in. Boss, good morning, Tom said. He wiped his hands on a rag. His weathered face broke into a grin. We didn't expect you. David said you were taking some time off. Just felt like getting my hands dirty, I said. I tried to keep my voice casual. How are things running? Tom and Kevin exchanged a look, a quick, nervous glance that told me everything I needed to know. Something was very wrong. Busy, Kevin chimed in, stepping forward. He was younger than Tom, but just as sharp. Real busy. The bays are full. But, he hesitated. But what? I asked. The casual tone was gone. Tom lowered his voice. The inventory is a mess, boss. We're constantly waiting on simple parts, filters, brake pads, sensors, things we always used to have in stock. That didn't make sense. We always kept a deep inventory. David says the new supplier is cheaper, Tom continued, but the deliveries are always late. It's slowing us down, costing us labor hours. I frowned. That wasn't how I ran my business. I built this place on efficiency and quality. We never skimped on parts. You don't save money by making customers wait. And the new billing system, Kevin added. He shook his head, frustration clear on his face. It's a nightmare, Robert. Overcharging clients for services we didn't perform. Missing invoices. He looked genuinely pained. We've had more complaints in the last 6 months than in the last 10 years. A cold dread started to pool in my stomach. This wasn't just mismanagement. This felt deliberate, like they were sabotaging the business. But why? I headed toward the office in the back. The nerve center of the business. I knew every file, every account. I opened the door without knocking. David was on the phone, his back to me, his voice low and urgent. I told you, the payment is coming, he whispered harshly. You just need to wait until the end of the month. Yes, I know what I promised. I'll get it. He heard the door open and spun around, startled. He quickly hung up the phone. Dad, what are you doing here? He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the room. He looked guilty. Still my shop, David, I said. My voice was harder than I intended. I came to look over the quarterly reports and the inventory logs. Tom tells me we have a supplier issue. David's face turned pale. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he had since he was a kid. The reports, The computer system has been acting up. He gestured vaguely at the sleek new monitor on the desk. The new software Jessica installed. It's complicated. It keeps crashing. He was scrambling, lying badly. It's complicated, Dad, he repeated. I haven't finalized the numbers yet. The old system worked just fine, David, I said, keeping my voice steady. The one I used for 20 years. We didn't need new software. We didn't need new suppliers. I walked toward the desk. I stood over him. Show me the raw data, the bank statements. Now. I can't right now, Dad, he stammered, backing away slightly in his chair. I have a meeting. It's sensitive. Before David could say anything else, the office door swung open. Jessica stood there, holding two expensive-looking coffees. A dazzling smile plastered on her face. It was a mask. I could see the cracks now. There you are, sweetheart, she cooed at David. She completely ignored me. She handed him a coffee. Then she turned to me. The smile turned turbid, cold. Robert, she said, her tone sharp. You shouldn't be bothering David during work hours. He's under a lot of stress running this place. Bothering him? I own this place. He worked for me. I'm asking for the business reports, Jessica, I said firmly. As the owner, I have a right to see them. Jessica laughed. A sharp, unpleasant sound. Owner, Robert, let's be realistic. She walked past me, sitting on the edge of David's desk, claiming the space. You haven't been actively involved in months. The business world has changed. It's all digital now, she waved her hand dismissively. You don't understand how these things work anymore. It's too complex for you. She stepped closer, her voice dripping with fake concern. Why are you suddenly so distressful? We are your family. We are taking care of you. She tilted her head, examining me like I was a confused old man. Why don't you go home and rest? You look tired. Her words were like little needles, designed to prick my confidence, to make me doubt myself, taking care of me, by isolating me, by making me feel useless and old. They were gaslighting me, trying to convince me I was incapable of managing my own life. And I realized, with a sickening certainty, that they had been doing it for 2 years. I want the reports, David, I said firmly. I looked my son in the eyes. I needed him to see I wasn't backing down. I wasn't the broken man they thought I was. David looked trapped. He stared at Jessica, pleading silently. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. He finally looked down at his desk, defeated. I'll get them to you next week, Dad, he mumbled. I promise. I knew he was lying. I left the shop. The realization was settling in. It was heavy, suffocating. They weren't just taking over my house. They were taking over my business. They were stealing from me. I drove straight to my daughter's apartment. Sarah, she was my Aegis. Bright, compassionate. A nurse, always taking care of others. I had hidden the situation from her. I didn't want to burden her. I didn't want her to see how weak I had become. But I couldn't do this alone. If this story is hitting close to home, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps more than you know, and it lets me know I'm not alone in this fight. When Sarah opened the door, her face was etched with exhaustion. But the moment she saw me, her eyes sharpened with worry. Dad, are you okay? She pulled me inside. You look terrible. What happened? I sat her down on her small couch, and I told her everything. The basement, the armchair, the sterile house. The way they treated me like a servant. And then, the piano. When I told her about the piano, she started to cry. Martha had taught her to play on those keys. And I told her about the shop, the missing reports, the lies, the way David couldn't look at me. I think they are stealing from me, Sarah, I said. The words tasted like ash. I think they are running my business into the ground and pushing me out. Sarah was horrified. Her hand flew to her mouth. David, he would never, she whispered, shaking her head. He loves you, Dad. It must be Jessica. She's always been ambitious, greedy. He's letting her do it, Sarah, I said. The weariness washed over me. He stood there while she threw away your mother's piano. He's lying to my face. That's the same thing as doing it himself. Sarah was quiet for a long time. processing. The truth settling in. I noticed things too, she admitted slowly. Her voice trembled. Things that didn't add up. Like what? They bought a brand new Mercedes last month. Top of the line. I hadn't known that. They must have kept it hidden from me. Jessica said her wellness business was bringing in massive profits, Sarah continued, and they are planning a vacation to Europe this summer. A month-long trip. First class. She looked at me, her eyes wide with realization. I wondered how they could afford it. The shop does well, Dad, but not that well. It all clicked into place. The new software, the confusing billing, the cheaper suppliers. It was all a smokescreen. They were siphoning the money, bleeding the business dry. We needed proof. That afternoon, Sarah went to the shop. An emergency oil change, she said. A ruse. While the guys worked on her car, she confronted David. Cornered him in the office. I waited in my truck down the street. My heart hardened. Every minute felt like an hour. 20 minutes later, Sarah came running to the truck. She was crying, her face red and blotchy. Dad, it's worse than we thought, she sobbed, climbing in. I pushed him. I asked him how he could betray you. What did he say? I dreaded the answer. He broke down. He admitted everything. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I knew it was true, hearing it confirmed felt like a death sentence. My own son. They'd been skimming profits for over a year, Sarah whispered. Jessica convinced him that you didn't need the money, that they deserved it from managing your life. The entitlement was staggering. She told him it was their inheritance, just early. There's more, Sarah whispered. Her eyes met mine, filled with pain. He's terrified of her, Dad. She threatened him. Threatened him how? She said, if he didn't go along with the plan, she would leave him and take the grandkids. She would ruin him, make sure he never saw the kids again. David was weak, manipulated, trapped, but he still chose her over me. He chose the money over his integrity. He chose to sacrifice his father. The pain made it hard to breathe. I loved my son, but in that moment, I didn't recognize him. I had to know the full extent of their plan. There was only one person who would know the legal picture. Mark. Mark was my oldest friend, my longtime lawyer. A man of integrity. We met at a Greasy Spoon diner across town. Away from prying eyes, we sat in a booth in the back. Mark looked grim when I told him everything. He didn't seem surprised. That scared me more than anything. Robert, I've been worried about you, Mark said. His eyes were sad, heavy. I have something you need to know, and it's not good. He leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. About 6 months ago, David and Jessica came to my office. They wanted my help. Help with what? I asked. My stomach tightened. They wanted to have you declared legally incompetent. The air rushed out of my lungs. Incompetent. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. They didn't just want my house, my business, my money. They wanted to take away my rights, my voice, my entire life. They wanted to erase me completely, legally. They claimed you were showing signs of dementia, Mark continued. His voice was filled with disgust. They said you were forgetting things, making poor financial decisions, putting the business at risk. They were building a case, manufacturing evidence. Every time I misplaced my keys, every time I forgot a name, they were documenting it, twisting it. They brought a list of incidents, Mark said, shaking his head. They wanted full guardianship, power of attorney over everything. But that's insane, I stammered. I'm perfectly fine. I know that, Robert, Mark said firmly. I told them I wouldn't do it. I blocked the application. I warned them that what they were suggesting was unethical, possibly illegal. What happened? They were furious, Mark said. Jessica accused me of being stuck in the past, just like you. He sighed. They fired me and hired someone new, a slick, expensive guy from the city, a man named Harrison. He's a shark, Robert. He specializes in hostile guardianships. This was the twist. It wasn't just greed. It was a calculated legal assault. They were planning steal my life and make it look legitimate. They are planning another attempt, Robert, Mark warned, and Harrison won't have the scruples I do. They're moving fast. You need to prepare for a fight. How could my own son do this? The betrayal was so deep, it threatened to swallow me whole. When I got home that evening, the house felt like a trap. The walls seemed to be closing in on me. I was a prisoner in my own home. I needed proof. I needed their plan in writing. While David and Jessica were upstairs putting the grandchildren to bed, I crept into the new home office. The room where Martha's piano used to be. It felt cold and alien. I started searching the drawers of Jessica's large glass desk. My hands were shaking. I felt like a thief. But I had no choice. This was war. The filing cabinets were locked. Of course they were. I returned to the desk. In the bottom drawer, hidden under a stack of glossy brochures for Jessica's wellness business, I found it, a thick, leather-bound folder. I opened it with trembling hands, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Inside were documents prepared by Harris, applications for an emergency competency hearing, fabricated medical reports from a Dr. Alan Albright, a doctor I had never met, suggesting advanced cognitive decline, early onset dementia, affidavits from people I barely knew, neighbors testifying to my erratic behavior, lies, and something else. Eviction papers, drafted, dated for the end of the month, ready to be served. They were planning to kick me out of my own house as soon as they had control, and then I saw the brochures. Nursing homes, cheap ones, state-run facilities, Shady Pines retirement. The kind of places people go to disappear, to die. The level of premeditation, the cold-blooded cruelty. It stunned me. The piano was just the beginning of the purge. I was next. I took the folder and retreated to the basement. My war room. I called Mark and Sarah. We had the evidence. We had to act fast. The competency hearing is the key, Mark said. His voice was firm and strategic over the phone. They scheduled it for next Friday. We have to be smart. You need to catch them in the act of perjury, of presenting fraudulent evidence. How? I asked.
To do that, Robert, Mark said slowly, you need to play along. Play along? The idea felt repulsive.
Yes, Mark insisted. You need to appear weak and confused. Let them think they are winning. Let them underestimate you. That's when they will make mistake. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. For the next week, I became the man they wanted me to be. I played the part of a frail, forgetful old man, the role they had written for me. I shuffled when I walked. My shoulders slumped. I pretended to forget names, repeating the same questions. Where are my keys? What day is it? I let Jessica boss me around, accepting her cruel remarks with a vacant smile. It was torture, every smirk, every condescending glance. It fueled the fire burning in my chest, but I kept the image of that leather folder in my mind. The hardest part, the part that tore my soul apart, was the grandchildren. Jessica started restricting my access to them, using them as pawns. One afternoon, I tried to read my grandson Leo a story. He was 5. I sat down in the living room, the book open on my lap. Leo climbed up next to me, his small face eager. Jessica walked in. Her face hardened when she saw us. Robert, what are you doing? She snapped. I'm reading Leo Lear, I said, keeping my voice mild. Confused. Your negative energy is upsetting the children, she told me, her voice cold and clinical. They need positivity and light. Not your gloom. She stood over us, her shadow falling across the pages of the book. Leo looked up at her, confused. He hugged my arm tighter. She pulled Leo off the sofa, hard. He didn't understand. He started to cry, reaching out for me. Grandpa, he sobbed. Story, I think it's best if you stay downstairs when they are awake, Jessica said, ignoring his cries. She dragged him out of the room. The look of confusion and hurt in his eyes nearly broke me. It nearly shattered my resolve. They were using my love for those children as a weapon. I swallowed the rage. The grief. If I reacted emotionally, it would only strengthen their case. I went back to the basement. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of Leo crying upstairs. Late one night, I heard David and Jessica arguing. I pressed my ear against the ceiling. "We're moving too fast, Jessica," David whispered nervously. "Maybe we should slow down. Dad seems really frail. He's getting worse." A flicker of guilt. My act was working. "That's exactly why we need to speed up," Jessica hissed back, her voice sharp and cold. "The sooner we have control, the better." "But the road," David started. "The competency hearing is almost here," she continued. "Once we have guardianship, we can liquidate the shop assets. Secure the loan using the house as collateral. Liquidate the assets, stripping the business bare. It's almost over. We're so close. Don't go weak on me now, David. Think of our future." I needed to confirm this. I needed proof of the destruction. The next day, while David and Jessica were out meeting with Harrison, I slipped out. I went to the shop one last time. Tom and Kevin were there, their faces grim. They looked like they were at a funeral. "Boss, we were about to call you," Tom said. He pulled me aside. "It's bad, really bad." "What is it?" I asked, bracing myself. "David, he's been selling off equipment," Kevin said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. "Major equipment, the hydraulic lift from Bay 3, the advanced diagnostic machines, the alignment rack, expensive stuff. Thousands of dollars worth of equipment. The backbone of the shop. Cree! Selling it cheap," Tom added, his voice rough with anger. "Fire sale prices. Saying we need the cash flow." "But the shop is busy," I said, the reality hitting me hard. The scale of their greed. "We know," Tom replied. "The money isn't coming back into the business, boss. It's disappearing. Moved to private accounts. They were gutting the business, leaving nothing but a shell." My life's work destroyed, the urge to confront David, to stop the bleeding. It was overwhelming, but I had to wait for the hearing, to expose them publicly. Irrefutably, I had to let the destruction continue. It was the only way to ensure they faced the consequences. I thanked them. I asked them to document everything. The sold equipment, the dates, the buyers, the invoices. They agreed, their loyalty unwavering. A few days before the hearing, I tried to talk to David one last time. A final attempt to reach the son I loved. I found him in the garage, staring at a box of Martha's old photographs. "Do you remember this one?" I asked. I picked up a photo of David as a boy, proudly holding his first fish, a gap-toothed grin splitting his face. David looked at the photo, his eyes filling with tears. "I remember," he whispered. "Lake Haven. What happened to that boy, David?" I asked, my voice gentle but firm. "The boy who loved his mother, who respected his father." "I don't know, Dad," he whispered, his voice broken. "I got lost." He looked up at me, his face ravaged by guilt and fear. "I wanted to be successful, to impress Jessica. I thought I deserved more," he was confessing. Expressing remorse, a part of me wanted to forgive him, to save him, to tell him it would be okay. But I knew that if I showed mercy now, I risked losing everything. I risked losing everything. I risked letting Jessica win. I had to stay strong, even if it meant sacrificing my son. I had to choose justice over mercy. "You made your choice, David," I said, my voice cold, the words tearing my heart apart. "Now you have to live with it." I walked away, leaving him there with the ghosts of the past and the ruins of his future. The day of the competency hearing arrived. It wasn't in a courtroom. It was a deposition, a preliminary hearing conducted by a court-appointed mediator, and they held it right there, in my living room. It felt obscene, a violation of the sanctity of my home. The place Martha and I had built a life, now the scene of the crime. The room was arranged like a courtroom. Jessica and David sat on the sleek, uncomfortable modern sofa. Their lawyer, Mr. Harrison, sat beside them. He had shiny shoes and a predatory smile, a shark. The mediator, a stern-looking woman in a gray suit, sat in a high-backed chair. I sat in a simple wooden chair I had brought up from the basement. Mark sat beside me, his face calm and reassuring, a steady presence in the storm. Sarah stood behind me, her hand resting on my shoulder, a silent pillar of strength. Mr. Harrison started questioning me. His voice was condescending, overly loud, as if I were deaf or stupid. "Mr. Miller, can you tell us the date today?" I hesitated, squinted at the ceiling, playing the part. "It's Tuesday? No, Wednesday. November? The year is... Do you know who the current president is?" I mumbled a name. The wrong name. A president from 10 years ago. "Do you remember what you had for breakfast this morning?" "Toast," I said weakly. "I think it was toast. Or maybe oatmeal," I answered slowly, haltingly, pretending to be confused, struggling to remember the answers. Just like Mark instructed, I hated the weakness, the deception. But I knew it was necessary. It was the bait for the trap. Jessica watched me with a satisfied smirk, her eyes glittering with triumph. She thought she had won. David just stared at the floor, his face pale and drawn. He couldn't even look at me. Then Mr. Harrison presented his evidence. The fabricated medical reports from Dr. Albright, the affidavits, the list of incidents they had twisted into proof of my decline. He painted a picture of a man lost the fog of dementia, incapable of making rational decisions. "It is clear," Mr. Harrison announced dramatically. He gestured toward me as if I were an exhibit, "that Mr. Miller is no longer capable of managing his own affairs, financially or personally." He turned to the mediator, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "For his own safety and the security of the family business, we ask that the mediator recommend full guardianship be granted to David and Jessica Miller." Jessica leaned back against the sofa. The picture of victory, her smile was wide, cruel. It was time. The trap was set. Mark stood up, his presence commanding the room. "We would like to present our own evidence," he said, his voice steady. Mr. Harrison looked surprised, then annoyed. He hadn't expected a fight. What alluded? This is a straightforward competency deposition. Mr. Miller's condition speaks for itself. "Does it?" Mark said calmly. Mark pulled out the financial records we had reconstructed. The true records, showing the shop was thriving, and then the parallel records, the ones David and Jessica had created, showing the systematic embezzlement, the shell corporations, the hidden accounts. "The business is not failing," Mark announced. His voice, clear and strong, echoing in the silent room. "It is being robbed." He laid the documents on the coffee table. The stack was thick, undeniable. David and Jessica Miller have embezzled over $200,000 in the last 18 months. Jessica gasped, her face turning white. The mask slipped. David looked like he was going to be sick. "That's a lie," Jessica screamed, jumping to her feet. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "This is slander. He's making this up. Robert is confused." Mr. Harrison tried to object, but the mediator silenced him with a cold, hard look. "Is it?" Mark continued, unfazed. He called in Tom and Kevin. They walked into the living room. They testified under oath about the missing equipment, the sold assets, the falsified inventory logs, the disappearing cash. They presented the documentation, the proof of the liquidation. Then Mark pulled out the thick leather folder, the one I found in Jessica's desk. He presented the fabricated medical reports from Dr. Albright, along with a report from my actual doctor, dated just last week, confirming my perfect health and cognitive function. Mark also presented a deposition from Dr. Albright, who, when faced with fraud charges, admitted he was paid by Jessica to fabricate the diagnosis. Then Mark presented the hidden eviction papers and the brochures for Shady Pines. They were planning to throw their father out of his own home, Mark said, his voice heavy with disgust, and into a state-run facility as soon as they had control. He handed the papers to the mediator. Her face was now grim. Mr. Harrison's predatory smile had vanished. He knew he was complicit in a fraud. The room was silent. The betrayal hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. Finally, it was my turn. I stood up, I didn't shuffle. I stood tall, the strength of a man who has fought for everything he has. I looked directly at David, then at Jessica. You thought I was weak, I said, my voice resonating with power, controlled anger. You thought I was old, obsolete. You thought I was junk, to be discarded. I walked over to the empty space by the window, the spot where Martha's piano used to be. This is my house. I built it, I said, my voice rising. Miller's Mechanics is my business. I built that too. This is my life, and you tried to erase it. I turned back to them. Jessica was trembling with rage, her face contorted in hatred. David was crying silently, his head in his hands. You tried to steal everything Martha and I built together. You treated me like garbage. I took a deep breath. It's time to throw the real junk out of my house. Mark handed me 2 envelopes. I handed one to David, one to Jessica. These are eviction notices. You have 30 days to leave my house, I said coldly, and these are notifications that I am pressing charges for embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Jessica's face turned purple. She lunged at me, her eyes blazing. You can't do this to us. We are your family. We have children. You owe us. Family doesn't steal, I said, my voice like ice. Family doesn't betray, and you will not use those children as shields for your greed. I looked at David, my son, the broken man, sitting on the expensive sofa. You broke my heart, son. David looked up, his face streaked with tears, pleading. Dad, I'm so sorry. She made me. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped. You made your choice, David, I said, cutting him off. The time for excuses was over. The damage was done. Mr. Harrison packed his briefcase and left without a word. The mediator concluded the hearing. The guardianship request was denied. A full investigation into the fraud allegations would be launched immediately. Jessica stormed out of the room, screaming threats about lawyers and revenge. David just sat there, sobbing, the eviction notice clutched in his hand. A month later, they were gone. The legal battle was messy, painful. David and Jessica, facing undeniable evidence, didn't stand a chance. They were forced to return what they could, but most of the money was already spent on the Mercedes, the expensive clothes, the first-class tickets to Europe, the lifestyle they thought they deserved. Their reputation in town was ruined. The last I heard, David was working as a delivery driver in another county, living in a small, run-down apartment. Jessica's wellness business had collapsed. She left him shortly after the conviction. I granted David supervised visitation with the grandchildren. I wouldn't let Leo and his sister suffer for their parents' mistakes. But the relationship between David and me, it was shattered, broken beyond repair. The house was quiet now. Too quiet. Sarah and I sat in the living room. The sleek, modern furniture was gone. I had sold it all. I brought my old leather armchair back up from the basement. It felt familiar, comforting, like an old friend. I walked over to the empty space by the window, the spot where Martha's piano used to be. The silence felt heavy, filled with the echoes of music and the screams of betrayal. We should get a new piano, Dad, Sarah said softly. She placed a hand on my arm. Her touch was warm, reassuring. No, I whispered. I touched the faint scratches on the hardwood floor, where the piano had stood for 40 years. No, this one was perfect. The victory felt hollow. I had won. I had my house back. I had my business back. Tom and Kevin were helping me rebuild the shop. Restoring the integrity of Miller's Mechanics, we were busy, busier than ever, but I had lost my son. I thought about David as a little boy, helping me in the shop, his small face covered in grease, his eyes shining with pride as he handed me a wrench. Where did that boy go? How could ambition and greed curdle love into something so toxic? The tears finally came. I wasn't crying because of the betrayal or the money. I was crying for the loss of the son I thought I knew. I was crying for the family that was broken, shattered by greed and entitlement. Sarah came and held my hand. We sat there in the silence, the ghosts of the past surrounding us. I was safe. I had my life back. But the cold that had settled in my heart 2 years ago when Martha died, it was still there, and now It was colder than ever. I learned a hard lesson. Sometimes, the things you build with your hands are stronger than the bonds of blood, and sometimes, to save your home, you have to clean house, even if it means throwing away the people you thought were your treasure. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.